Hello, great to see you, beautiful being. Oneness Evolving here, out in my front garden in the sunshine, where spring has definitely sprung. And because this is a Facebook Live and it needs to have a little while to get live and go around into groups and things, I'm going to show you the garden because that's what we do. And there is so much to show you. Look at this. The spring festival, as I think of it, is really starting to happen here. Look at this. Bright colours. I fertilised this bed this year because I just had a suspicion that maybe things were short of food. And so I'm quite curious to see how it all is. And look at this. It's beautiful. Just gorgeous out here. And in a little while, this whole thing will be just lit up with colour. So, these are the early ones that come out and bless us before everybody else does. Isn't that gorgeous? And the sunshine on the greenery. I just love the foliage, never mind the flowers. There are more flowers here. We have muscari. They're very early hyacinths. And they're called muscari, like the musk grape, because they look like little bunches of grapes. And look at the spirals. I very carefully planted spirals and curved shapes in this bed, and the whole thing's come up beautifully. See, there's a big one there. It just curves around like that. And then there's another one and another one. So I like that. And just the colours and all the bulbs coming up. It's beautiful out here. And look, we've got calendula, the new calendula plants, which I'm trying to stop to make sure that they don't actually smother my tulips here, because this just sort of self-seeded, but I will break off a couple of leaves because I want the tulips to get some sunlight, because I want them to grow. And the calendula won't mind because they've got lots of leaves. So there you go. And look, the sedum is out. Look at its beautiful flowers. So it's just everything is spring here, and don't they look beautiful right next to the freesias? Look, there's a little bee doing its job back there. And there's just so many flowers, and of course the bees are busy in this corner of the world. There's plenty of food for them. So there you go. The flowers are just happening here. And the other thing, of course, that's more and more happening is the cinerarias starting to come out. I planted these ones right under the tree, and of course they grow up around the bottom of it and make it look beautiful. And the violets are still going. I know they're not violets, but they are violets. They smell great, and they make these little pom-pom flowers, which I really enjoy. So now in back of here, because I planted them in the wrong place. See, this plant is growing beautifully, and it's got these white flowers down here, which are really gorgeous. So I just want you to not miss out on them. Look, this one's coming as well. So I'll plant the cineraria in a better place next year. And that one was the first one to come out, and it's just all over flowers now. And the magnolia is doing its thing. And you can see it's all starting to happen here. This is just the season for flowers in the front garden. I'll try and get the camera so the sun's not coming straight into the lens. It's a bit hard to see. There we go. Magnolia nigra is its fancy name. And it's beautiful here. And look, you can see the light coming through the flowers, and they look like rubies or fine claret. So there you are. I pruned this down. It's going to come sprouting away. See those that's a little sprout it's not sharp at all. Come on. Yeah, see? So that's going to grow. It'll be like this, and then it'll be a big thick thing as thick as those things that I cut off. So the garden is just coming away. We've got Granny's bonnet, columbine, and suddenly the, its name escapes me at the moment. The Luculia is looking very tatty, but that's because it's kind of at the end of its cycle, and then it will make new leaves. And we have more flowers and bluebells starting their explosion, and the iris is going to flower for the first time in a very long time. It's very exciting to me because I haven't seen, see, this is a flower head coming. I haven't seen this iris flower for decades. Hello, beautiful people. It's lovely to have you joining me. Welcome, welcome. If you make a comment or tag yourself with something, I'll be able to greet you personally. There's the fuchsia, which hasn't stopped flowering all winter. It's an amazing plant. And now it's spring. It just keeps going. And I like that it's orange inside. So it's very bright here and there's a lot happening. It's a sunny day. And I'm excited because the Spiraxis bed is just off and running. So I'm going to have one more close-up look at the flowers and then we're going to go inside and talk about manifestation because, well, that's what we do. So each week on a Wednesday morning for me and perhaps a Tuesday for you, I carve out some time and I sit at my computer and I write. And I'm writing about being God of me, being my own boss, being able to manifest what I want in my life, make the changes I want in my life, feel happy in my life, all of that stuff that we want to do. And for about the last year, I've been writing about why it's so hard to change from feeling bad to feeling good, because that was something I didn't even know was really hard, and it was a great problem for me. And then I started to learn why, and I spent the last year explaining in my simple terms why it's so hard to change from feeling bad to feeling good. And there's a reason for that. And if you want to go and check all of that out, check me out on Patreon, click the link in the bottom of this post, and you can find out there is a reason why it is not easy to go from feeling bad to feeling good, but understanding it actually helps you make different choices. And sooner or later I'll be doing some tools and some how-to and, you know, all that stuff. But that's not what I'm doing right now. What I'm doing right now, I want to explain in the same kind of way. I mean, this is a major thing. Who on earth really has the, I don't know, the temerity, the rind to say, how does that manifestation work? And let's see if we can pull this apart. I feel a little bit like a naughty child, but I'm so enjoying this. This is so cool. So one of the things I realised, I know last week I said I did a big brain dump and then I sort of picked a thing that I got interested in and started to talk about it. And you can review last week's rave for that. But what I realised between then and now, because I'm talking about the fundamental structure of matter. And you might think, what does, some very basic physics about the fundamental structure of matter have to do with manifestation? Who gives a damn? Well, it's important because if you're going to use your mind to create something out of nothing, then you need to actually have a clue about how matter works and what it's made of, which is generally not what we think, okay? The world is just not how it appears, and matter is not solid. It really isn't. It's just all a bunch of whatever it is. I don't know. I don't have a short way to explain it. So this is a long conversation, but this is where I'm at this week. So I've drawn quite a few pictures. And when I've got those pictures finished, I'm actually going to put them up on my Patreon so you can see them. Because words are great, but pictures are sometimes necessary. And what I realised between last week and this week, which I never actually told you, because this is such a big rabbit hole and there's so many places I can go, is that if you want to understand the fundamental structure of matter and how that works and what that's got to do with manifesting things with your mind and all that stuff, you really need to understand the fundamental nature of matter without turning into a quantum physicist, because you don't actually need to be one to do that. Because I'm not a quantum physicist, but I've read a few things and I've thought and I've figured some stuff out. And most of all, I'm experimenting with it and finding that it's actually true. But you do need to understand how matter works. And so I was talking a bit about that last week and the amazing stuff that I've been learning from Nassim Haramein and, of course, from Dr. Joe Dispenza. And that's all great, but I realised that it's really hard to relate to. It is really hard to relate to. Because, I mean, how small is an atom and how do you visualise an atom and how big are the actual bits,
So I realised I needed to wind back a bit, and before I start talking about the fundamental structure of matter, I have to talk about the atom. So this week I've been talking about the atom. Now don't switch off because you think, oh, how boring. Everything's made of atoms, right? Everything is made of atoms. So whatever you're trying to manifest in your life, whatever you're creating in your life, sooner or later there's going to be atoms involved. Even if it's just a feeling that you want to feel, you got to have chemistry that you make in your brain to feel that feeling. There are atoms in the chemistry that you make in your brain. So atoms, okay, and so I talk about the structure of them, how an atom is primarily, basically, it's a chunk of something in the middle that we call a nucleus, and then there are these electrons that whiz around the outside. That's an atom. And the only difference between one kind of atom and another is how many particles there are in the nucleus and how many electrons, and there's always a relationship between those. And if you take different kinds of atoms and stick them together, you can get different kinds of things. Apart from the fact that the atoms themselves are different. So, for example, oxygen, which is, a very important gas that we all know about because we breathe it and without it we die. That's an atom of oxygen has got a nucleus which has got 8 protons in it and 8 neutrons. Don't ask me to explain what those are yet. They're just teeny tiny bits of matter, and there are 8 of each. And then there are 8 electrons that whiz around in the space around it. They don't stick to particular little circles. You probably have in your mind a picture of a clump of something and then these lines around it where the electrons go. That isn't how it is now. What you actually have is this teeny tiny thing in the middle that you can barely see, and this big cloud, this big space around it where the electron can exist. And it's more likely to exist in the middle than it is around the edges. But sooner or later, the electrons are in all of that space. It's just they're in some parts of that space around the nucleus more often than they are in others. And that's about all I really want people to know about the electron, about the atom. That's it. But the fun part, the really, the first time I heard this, the mind-blowing part about an atom is how much of the atom is nothing at all. Because you have this picture in your mind, even when I've just told you this. Okay, there's a little thing in the middle, and then there's this cloud around it, and it's like it's more dense in the middle because the electrons are more likely to show up in the middle than they are around the edge. You can imagine it's sort of dark in the middle, and whatever colour that circle is filled with, it gets paler towards the edge, right? And then it stops. Because an atom is a defined thing with a space around it where the electrons are. But the problem with that is that really you're thinking about something equivalent to like a pea that's in the middle of a large dinner plate, or maybe a large serving plate, or even in the middle of a circular table, but you're still thinking about something small in the middle of something big. The problem is that the small is really, 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 really small, and the big is really, 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 really big, just for one atom. And it's very hard to comprehend. So this is a thing that I heard a long time ago, but it stuck with me because it was so striking. And it must have been Dr. Joe who I learned it from, but I honestly don't know. It's most likely because I've listened to him the most. That if you take the bit in the middle of the atom, the nucleus, and you make it the size of like a Land Cruiser. He actually said a Volkswagen, but I decided to make it a Toyota Land Cruiser because most people know about Toyota, and a Land Cruiser, it's a chunky big 4-wheel drive vehicle, right? So that's the nucleus of your atom. Hang fire. The electrons that whiz around that Land Cruiser are the size of a pea, right? So you have a nucleus, which is the size of a Land Cruiser, and electrons the size of the pea. So a Land Cruiser is a hell of a lot bigger than a pea. But if you imagine in your mind, okay, so here's a Land Cruiser, and then there are peas and they're whizzing around, how much space in your mind do you think there is between or around the Land Cruiser where the pea can exist? Make a mental guess. Go on, give it a go. Is it the size of your school rugby field? Is it the size of your city? Is it the size of the earth? I mean, how big is it? Make a wild guess. I would have had no idea. So if you take that Land Cruiser and you stick it in the middle of the state of Texas, The state of Texas is the area. I mean, I know it's a funny shape, but if you make that roughly into a circle, and remember it's actually a sphere, because of course atoms aren't flat, it's like a sphere and there's this thing in the middle of it. But to give you some idea, the area the size of the state of Texas is how big the space is that those peas are whizzing around in. So there's this teeny tiny Volkswagen Toyota Land Cruiser in the middle of the state of Texas, and however many peas whizzing around in the whole of the state of Texas, and that is an atom. It's crazy. It's mostly space. And that's just, what? How is it that all this stuff to us seems so real and, it hurts when we bump into it? It's mostly space. What? And what's going on in that space anyway? And I can't simply answer that question yet. Some of it I think is because people don't know, and some of it is because I haven't done the homework. But it's like what? You mean matter is mostly space? And the thing that I'm going to look up the next time I start writing is this thing it's information. It's not information technology. It's information physics. I can't remember. But the point is that even if the atom is 99.9999999999999% nothing, it's doing something, and it's certainly vibrating. Every atom has a frequency of vibration. If you put things through a spectrometer, they each make a different kind of pattern when, because there's a different frequency, there's different information in everything. And I know I'm leaving all kinds of gaps because I haven't done the work yet to explain it to you. But the point is that something is making a resonance, something is making a frequency. There's information. And information is very, very close to thought. And do you think maybe that if we can change the information, that we can change matter? Well, it does turn out that that's true, that we can. Again, I can't succinctly yet explain it to you because I'm still learning. Because I know this, because I experience this, and I have experienced it really, truly in my own life. And I said that there are many others who do too. But this is the rabbit hole. I've got to find the way to explain it to you. And it's crazy that we think that all of this stuff is so solid and, I can't change this with my awareness, with my mind. But if it's all information, maybe there are ways that we can. And so the point being that you have an atom, and it's 99.99999999999% space. It's a near perfect vacuum, and yet somehow it's still something. And then how you have this massive scale of this vehicle, and then the peas, and then the whole state of Texas. And that's a big scale, right? It's a massive scale with tiny bits of matter. Well, it turns out that atoms aren't the smallest. Well, most people know that atoms are not the smallest that you can go. There are smaller things because quantum physicists and physicists have been smashing atoms together with particle accelerators for a long time, and they've discovered that you get these other particles that are smaller and smaller and smaller, and they keep going smaller and smaller and looking for the smallest one. They don't find the smallest one. They haven't found it yet. But there is actually another unit, if you like, of matter that is very, very, very much smaller. And I know I talked about it last week. It's called the Planck, Planck, after Max Planck. The Planck spherical unit, it's tiny. It's so small. Texas and peas in a vehicle have got nothing on this kind of small. But it's another degree of scale smaller than that. Hugely small. And it looks to be at the moment that is the fundamental nature of matter. And it turns out that there are connections that we can make between something that's that small and so much information and so much energy. And I talked about how much energy there is in it last week. Might have done that with my patrons. I lose track who I've told what. You have to follow me on Patreon to find out. Because I'm so excited by all of this, especially because it's new for me to write about it. It's not nearly as familiar, so I'm going to go down all kinds of rabbit holes. But that's what I've been writing, and I actually had to get out my photo editor thing and finding images that are, excuse me, I've got a chair, finding Creative Commons images that I can use. Obviously, I've got to give attribution. They've got licenses, but I can use them without paying for them. And finding ways to illustrate these concepts so that they make sense. And so when I've got these pictures right, I'm going to put them up on Patreon. You can see them and go, oh, really? And remember that this is what we are made of. It's not some theoretical thing which is just like, oh, it's out there. You know, I mean, did I say last week that, you know, when you get out into space, because people talk about it this way, you get out into space and there's no stars and no nothing left there. But if you take 1 cubic centimetre of perfectly empty space, the vacuum of space, the energy inside that 1 cubic centimetre is enough to run the entire universe forever. I mean, that's crazy. 1 cubic centimetre. But then if you think, hang on a minute, you just said that 99.9999999999999% of the matter that makes up my body is also space. Does that mean that there's that much energy inside 1 cubic centimetre of the so-called matter that makes up my body? Yeah. This is something that landed like a kind of a, you know, intellectual bombshell in my awareness on Saturday morning when I was doing a walking meditation. Oh my God, it's not just out there. It's in here. That amount of energy is sitting in the tip of my finger. If only I can learn how to access it. Vast amounts of energy. Enough energy to run the universe in the end of my finger. It's mind-blowing. Now, I don't know how to access it yet, but I'm curious. And surely, if that's the nature of the matter that we think we are, but really aren't, we should find out a little bit about how it works. Not enough to become a quantum physicist or a chemist or any of that, but just to have a basic idea, oh my God, this is how matter actually comes about. How gravity exists, why it exists. It's crazy. Because nothing that we've been told, well, a lot of what we've been told, is either kind of bent out of shape, I think, this is my opinion, it's bent out of shape, or it's the right bits, but they've been put together in ways that didn't work. And I'm saying that the people who are questioning those things, they've been questioning them for 20, 30 years. It's taken them a lifetime of study and frequently being a great deal of resistance from the establishment and from the academia who say, no, that's not true. You're full of shit. Really unpleasantly. But the science is starting to catch up with these visionaries and show that everything just isn't the way that we have thought it would be. Just like the old, dot in the middle with lines around it, going around it, is just so not how the atom is. It isn't. Well, matter isn't what we think it is either. Matter is not solid. In fact, it's a whole bunch of electrostatic charges. There's lots of positives and negatives interacting that make anything hold together anyway. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's a complete rabbit hole, and I'm just gonna surrender to the fact that I don't know and keep learning and keep explaining it to you because it's so much fun doing this. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening in. Follow me on Patreon to get all the bits and pieces as they come along. It's going to be fun. I'm going to end up knowing a lot more about this stuff than I do now. I have all these intuitive feelings. I've listened to these people. I've learned from them. But to actually explain it, you have to know it in a different way. And I'm so enjoying being in this new topic, answering this new crazy question. How does manifestation work? Well, I want to know. And it's this blend of what happens in our brain and what happens in our body and the fundamental things that are beginning to be understood about matter, about energy, about how this universe works, that I'm pulling together for myself into something that actually makes sense and even gets results. And I'm not the only person that's doing that, but I'm explaining my journey and what I've learned And I just love that. So thank you. I invite you to join me on Patreon. I celebrate you and being with me on YouTube if that's where you are. And I look forward to being with you next week to tell you more. Until then, much love.